Hey guys, what is up? Pellic back to another video, and today we're talking about puzzling cartel chips and specifically which items you should consider purchasing with them as a Shadow Priest for Season 2. This is kind of launching midway season, giving you an option to purchase gear deterministically from bosses you've killed or Mythic Plus dungeon loot tables as well. So in this video, I'm going to kind of break down what those options are for you to consider. It's going to be kind of character specific, but I'm going to cover what might make sense for some folks. If you haven't already seen, this information is already published in the guide. I'm just going to be kind of walking through it to hopefully explain it in a bit more detail today. So let's dive in. All right, so if you're watching this video, that means Cartel chips have launched, which means the first week, I think you get to purchase an item right away. Over the course of several weeks after killing raid bosses, you'll get to purchase 3 items in total. So this is very important. You don't get as many of these as you want. It is a set amount. The other really important thing to note is what you can purchase depends specifically on the content that you have already cleared, okay? So for example, if you really want to buy a house of cards at the highest item level track possible, you need to kill one-armed bandit on mythic difficulty. If you've only killed one-armed bandit on LFR or normal, you can only purchase a hero track version of House of Cards, right? Now, this also means if you're currently progressing through the raid, and let's say right now you're progressing mythic one-armed bandit, so you buy a hero track House of Cards, then you kill one-armed bandit, you have to then use another puzzling cartel chip on a mythic one. You don't get like an upgrade path from hero to mythic. So if you're currently progressing the raid or mythic plus items, I would suggest holding off on buying anything from bosses that you are having a potential to kill. Now, obviously, this really depends on when you want this power, right? As a Shadow Priest, we do have several options. A lot of you guys might already be kind of winding down progression, or you're kind of finishing up progression for the tier, whether that's hero, heroic, or mythic, whatever else it may be. Maybe you're just a mythic plus player and you're trying to push whatever you can. So you kind of want to make the decision, right? Like, do you want to optimize for right now, or do you want to wait a little bit until after you've cleared the raid? Because there's a lot of good items off of Gallywix, for example, at mythic. But if you wait until after you've killed Gallywix, you've kind of finished progression. At that point, you're just like farming parses. So it's kind of up to you where you want to optimize for, whether it's progression or not. So yeah, that's a TLDR of how the system works. Now, as a Shadow Priest, even though we can purchase items from the dungeon loot pool or the raid loot pool, generally speaking, that doesn't really matter to us, and we are pretty much going to be focused on the raid loot pool. Now, that being said, there's one caveat there, and it's specific to House of Cards. So, in general, we like the raid loot better than dungeon loot, with the exception of that kind of track that I was talking about. And specifically, for Mythic Plus, to unlock the Myth Track trinkets, you just have to do plus 12s of every key. I say just. Once you do that, then you unlock the Myth Track version of those trinkets. This is particularly useful for the Priory of the Sacred Flame trinket, Signet of the Priory. So, if, for example, you don't have any expectation of ever killing one-armed bandit on Mythic, or maybe that's too far away from you and something like that, and you don't think a Myth Track House of Cards is in your future, well, if you do all plus 12, you could purchase a Mythic Signet of the Priory instead. So, generally speaking, a Mythic Signet of the Priory is going to be better than House of Cards. Okay, so just to explain that even further, if, for example, you've only cleared Heroic and you only have access to a Hero Track House of Cards, that can be upgraded all the way up to 671. If, on the other hand, you've cleared all plus 12s, you can purchase a Signet of the Priory that can go all the way up to 684. So you can see that that Priory trinket is slightly better than House of Cards. This is just assuming just general, like no one else is using Signet. It does gain like 0.1% DPS. The more people that use it, but it's super, super minor. But this all just goes to show you that this is really the only real option to consider outside of raiding, in my opinion, is the Signet, if you know for sure that House of Cards is not in your future. Because House of Cards at full myth track is slightly better than Signet of the Priory, even though we only use it every 2 minutes. Now, there are a couple other dungeon trinkets that are, okay, or what I would call like right below best in slot. But if you have access to purchase best in slot, that doesn't really make sense to look at them, right? So, Synergistic Materializer, I don't know. I hate playing with it, so I would never recommend anyone purchasing it, but it is technically there. Scarred Core, Mana Battery, they're up there. They're decent. Mostly passive, but Blaziken Wax as well. But usually, I would just go for what is considered S tier, right? So generally speaking, that's how it's going to go back. So if we talk about what to actually purchase as a Shadow Priest, we're going to, again, focus on the raid pool, but there is that caveat with Priory, depending on House of Cards usage. So Usually what we have here to purchase is trinkets, a weapon, or the ring. And specifically, the ring is the Jester diamond. The weapon is the big earner's bludgeon. So let's talk about the easy stuff first, and then we'll get into trinkets. So let's talk about the weapon. So a lot of people might be gravitated towards the big earner's bludgeon. It's listed as best in slot everywhere. It's dropped from Mugsy. So let's say you've already killed Mugsy on mythic difficulty, good to go. You could buy your best in slot mythic weapon. I would be very cautious about wasting or using a cartel chip on the big earner's bludgeon, because while technically it is our best in slot weapon, it's a very minor DPS increase over a crafted weapon or any other myth track weapon. Okay, it's not that great. It's really good for like long progression fights, but especially as we wind down into farm, it just gets worse and worse and worse the faster things that die. Again, it's just like a nice damage proc. It's just nice to have. So if you already have a myth track weapon or you already have a crafted weapon, both of which I'm sure many people watching this probably do, I would honestly hold off on big earner's bludgeon. This would be like maybe the third thing that you buy, or maybe just wait for it to drop if you're clearing Mugsy anyways. The proc does not make a hero track bludgeon better than a myth track weapon. And you're going to have to spend a lot of crest to upgrade it. So generally speaking, this is like the last thing that I would ever purchase with the cartel chip. It's also not a very contentious item. So if you are clearing the raid, not a whole lot of people are going to like care that much about it. It is a mace, so it's not as contested across the other specs. So yeah, want to put that caveat out there. It is technically BIS, but we're talking like, single digit, very small percentage points better than a myth track weapon, right? So delay getting this to start with. Now, again, if you're in the spot where you're like, hey, I just have a hero track weapon right now, should I buy this? In my opinion, no. I would actually spend those crests on crafting a weapon instead and delaying this even further. That's just my 2 cents. I think crafted just makes way more sense for more people at that point. Okay, so now let's cover the Jester diamond. This is the other non-trinket item that you really want to think about. Long story short, this is our best in slot ring. Cersei Circlet is kind of dead in this patch in the sense of once you get a full 684 ring, you'll pretty much drop Cersei's. We're going to use this ring all the time. It's very good, best stats, we love it. The problem is you have to kill Gallywix to get a myth track version. So if you've already killed Gallywix on Mythic and you don't have this at Hero Track, this is probably a great thing to buy first. If you have not killed Gallywix yet and you can only buy a Hero Track version, you could consider holding off buying it if you see a Gallywix kill in your future, right? So my guild personally, hopefully we kill Gallywix next week or so. So I'm going to delay purchasing Jester Diamond until I've killed Gallywix, right? There's no reason to waste a Hero Track 1 when I know a Myth Track 1 is coming up. And I already have a Hero Track version, okay? So this is a top purchase to consider, but you really want to weigh when or if you're going to be able to kill Mythic Gallywix. If you know you're never going to kill him on Mythic difficulty and you don't have one currently, maybe you use a cartel chip on a Hero Track version. It's probably a really big upgrade for you. That is something to consider. But again, very kind of a personal choice on what your goals are for the tier. Okay, everything else is basically trinket related. Okay, so now we're just min-maxing trinkets. So if we take the priory discussion that I earlier, take that out the window. Hold that thought in your head if you're in that spot, but it should be kind of a niche area. Let's cover trinkets. The big ones to consider for a Shadow Priest are Mugs, Moxie Jug, Eye of Kazam, and House of Cards. Okay, these are our kind of rotating best in slot top 3 trinkets. Okay, for basically all content, raid, Mythic Plus, you name it. Now, generally speaking, Mugs, Moxie Jug is just the trinket this tier, okay? And I made a little bit of a flow chart here to kind of describe how I feel about this and what I would do personally. So if you don't currently have Mugs Moxie Jug and you can buy it at Myth Track, buy that sucker. This thing is really good, really, really strong. Love it, love it, love it. It's just that good. You're going to use it all the time, Mythic Plus, keys, whatever. This also lets us kind of run a bit less crit than usual, which makes gearing a little easier too. Next up, if you're in a spot where you really want to optimize for really long raid encounters, you could go with Eye of Kazan. Now, this is where the tricky part comes in, because to buy a Myth Track Eye of Kazan, you have to kill Mythic Gallywix. At that point, fights are going to stop. If you've done that, fights are no longer going to be lasting 6 minutes, aside from like maybe the last couple bosses, right? Maybe just the last two. Well, I guess Cauldron of Carnage, but that's a weird fight anyways. So if you're in the spot where you want to optimize that, you can go for Eye of Kazan. Now, if you are a heroic level raider, like you're not stepping into Mythic and you're still progressing AOTC, this might be a really good option to consider for those long end fights. But for those of you that are focused on Mythic, again, kind of weird, but it is there if you want to optimize for really long raid encounters specifically, okay? Next up is House of Cards. This is just straight up our best on-use trinket this tier, slightly better than Priory, again, at equal item level. If you don't have one of these, I would definitely suggest using it. It's a great pairing. You're either basically going to want to use Mugs with Eye of Kazan for long progression fights, or Mugs with House of Cards for everything else. And this is like kind of the flow chart that you want to have. So like, for example, I already have Hero Track Mugs and Hero Track Kazan. I don't have any House of Cards yet, even though I've killed Mythic Bandit. I'm probably going to buy House of Cards, right? Because I don't have it. Now, if I already had one at Hero Track, then I would basically upgrade existing trinkets based on this flow, right? So going from Hero Track Mugs Moxie to Mythic Track Mugs Moxies, 1% damage, right? Hero Track Eye of Kazan and Mythic Track Eye of Kazan, about 1% damage, right? So they're all pretty kind of in that same ballpark. This is like the rough thing that I would go out. So, okay, I know I've been rambling for quite some time, but hopefully this kind of helps the thought process of what to do in terms of like trinkets or rings and that kind of thing. I'd really prioritize the stuff that's contentious, right? This is kind of the point of like, you're wrapping up your gear here. What is your character really missing? Mugs Moxie Jug, Jester Diamond, very competitive items. Everyone wants these. So if you're trying to optimize, like getting these are going to be really nice, especially if you have unlocked them at their Myth Track variable. So yeah, this is like the kind of TLDR cheat sheet. Icy Veins covers most of this. I realized I didn't actually put a note about Priory. I will probably do that by the time this video comes up. And hopefully this all makes sense. If you have questions, feel free to ask in the Discord. And hopefully this gives you a little bit of a basis to start. But again, keep in mind, this is character specific. Just because I'm doing something or another Shadow Priest that you follow did something, or the other Shadow Priest in your raid did something, don't feel like you have to copy them. This is a personal decision based on your progression goals, what gear that you have. You can, of course, sim your options to see, but I'll bet you it's going to be pretty much close to what I'm saying here. And hopefully this helps out. Okay? Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.